Everyone, thank you for selecting my presentation, including students with autism spectrum disorder, real life strategies. And I'm really happy to be here, and you get your own little podcast for today while you get to eat your lunch. There has been a steady increase in the number of California students with autism, and just every year, and you guys know this, there's been an increase this year of 5,550 more students with autism, which makes it 16.46% of the total students with disabilities population. So that's a lot. So how are we doing educating students with autism spectrum disorder? Now we have a chart here that really talks a little bit about the English language arts performance level. And you can see right there that only 54.4% are meeting that English language arts standard. Now, when we look at the math performance levels for students with autism, 62% aren't meeting that math standard. We need to do better than that, don't you think? And when we look at least restrictive environment or inclusive education opportunities, we can see that only 40% of our students with autism are in the regular class less than 40% of the day. And we really want that to increase. And I think that's why you've all attended this amazing Inclusion Collaborative Conference, is to learn our strategies about that. When we look at exit reasons for students with autism, meaning, when they move on out of our public school system, we see that only about 43.3% actually graduate high school. And that number really should be higher, don't you think? Since almost half of all of our students with autism have average to above average cognition. The capabilities of getting that diploma is there, and the potential is there. When we look at post-secondary outcomes, that means we try to figure out after they're finished with our public education, what are they up to and what are they doing? Unfortunately, only about 56% are graduating high school and going on to higher education. And when we look down there at the fourth line, it says competitively employed. You see that only 6% are competitively employed. So let's take a look nationally at how our individuals with autism are doing. We see that over half of adults with autism, and that's starting really at 18 to 25 is pretty much the survey of this group, they had another mental health condition, and it tended to be either anxiety or a mood disorder or other mental illness. And 49% lived in the home of their parents or other relatives. And of these, 81% had been there over 5 years. So are you starting to get the picture that when and if they move on out of our public school system, they tend to be at home? Only 14% actually worked in the community for pay in settings that also employed people without disabilities. Remember now that we have new laws that say that our individuals with disabilities have a right to have an opportunity to be in an integrated employment, meaning not really at a separate work site with other individuals with disabilities, but integrated. So working at Starbucks, working at Safeway, working at a lab. And what we can see is only 14% are doing that. 27% had no work. And this is the sad part to me, or activities. So when they asked them, what are you doing with your time? And then we see that less than half of adults chose their daily schedule on their own in regard to when they woke up, ate, or went to sleep. And only 40% could choose how to spend their money on their own. I mean, think about it right now. What if you weren't able to choose how you spend your money or what your day is going to look like? A lot of what our education for individuals with autism and actually all students, is to really give them agency, meaning that they're able to make decisions on their own and have the freedom of choice, that they understand who they are and what their wants and desires. Research about inclusive education. We see that the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition has researched, and they've published a summary of in-school factors that were actual predictors of post-school success. So what are those? Well, you can see that the individuals who were doing well after we graduated or gave them a certificate, or they moved on to have more independent living after the age of 22, that inclusion is one of the top 4 predictors of post-school success. So that's evidence for us that we really do need to promote these inclusive education opportunities. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to keep saying this. Some of you can keep track of how many times I say evidence-based practice. But we're going to start from the very beginning with CAPTAIN, which is your statewide initiative on autism. We're an outcome of the Legislative Blue Ribbon Commission way back in 2006 and 2007, where they asked a group of us to find out, are we doing the right thing for individuals and families with autism in California? And if not, what are your recommendations? And if you remember the year 2007, the economy wasn't that good. So when we turned in our recommendations, they said, thanks so much. Well, we said, wait, we spent so much time with this stakeholder group. We need to do something with this really great information. And so CAPTAIN was born, the California Autism Professional Training and Information Network. And we are an interagency because families and individuals with autism are served by the regional centers, they're served at the schools, and they are served by our state and federally funded family support agencies. It was super important for us to have all of those agency representatives part of CAPTAIN so that we're all communicating the same thing, which is evidence-based, research-based practices are going to improve outcomes for individuals with autism. So we divided the state of California into 17 CAPTAIN regions. And if you want to know who your CAPTAIN cadre are, and just so you know, there's 400 of trained autism experts that are part of CAPTAIN who know about these evidence-based practices. And you just go to the CAPTAIN website and you can look up who your CAPTAIN cadre are. In order to be a participant in CAPTAIN, they have to have been nominated, and their requirements are to provide trainings, consultation, coaching, and supporting you out there who are working directly with individuals and families affected by autism. Fortunately, February 1st, we became a SELPA Content Lead, and our work finally became funded. And we're super excited because now we can really go forward at making sure these evidence-based practices are disseminated and implemented with fidelity. You can see right here, we're part of the statewide system of support, and our partner is with Marin County SELPA. When we look at the work of this SELPA Content Lead grant, we basically want to keep doing everything we said we wanted to do with CAPTAIN, which is to really maximize the academic and social and vocational outcomes, to make sure everybody really understands how to implement evidence-based practices with fidelity and how we scale that out so everybody knows about them, not just a select group, and that they're accessible. And then mostly you can see, I put in red here, that we really want one of our outcomes of this 5-year grant is to really provide everybody with this tools and resources so we can successfully have our individuals participate in inclusive education settings. So you can see it's a main focus of our work. So in those 17 regions with this grant money, we're able to provide funding to have a regional implementation lead. And so we do for 13 of the 17 CAPTAIN regions, and you can look up and see if you recognize or know any of these folks because you guys have the handout and that page. We also created a dissemination source. So the CAPTAIN website and our Facebook social media pages have all the tools, resources, and information that I'm going to talk to you about today. So if you think I'm going too fast, just know, oh, I can go to the CAPTAIN website and I can find out everything that Ann said today. So why are we so focused on these evidence-based practices? Well, if you did a Google search for autism treatment, you're going to come up with 147 million hits for autism treatment, and that was on September 8th. I'm guessing if I did it today, it would be even more. And what we know truly is the treatments for autism is more diverse than any other known disability. And the treatment claims are that, it can ameliorate, but there can be recovery. And many, if not most, of the interventions that you'll find on that Google search will have no scientific evidence. And it's not okay for people to believe everything that pops up there. Before I do these presentations, I always want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And as of today, we do not know what causes autism. We have ideas and there's lots of research, but we absolutely don't know what causes it. And we also do not have a cure. But what we do have are these evidence-based practices. And we do have research that does say it improves outcomes for individuals with autism if they're implemented with fidelity. And so why should we have to know about these evidence-based practices? Well, it's important for us to know which treatments have evidence and effectiveness and which ones don't. We need to be informed family members, informed self-advocates. We need to be informed educators. We need to understand what the research is telling us. And then it helps us make these informed decisions so that as we select an intervention or a practice or a treatment, that we've done that knowing that the research is there to support us and it's worth our time implementing this practice. And it also provides us with the opportunity to support individuals in reaching their full potential. Absolutely. So what are some other reasons? Well, it's the law. Sometimes I get challenged like, well, I like this thingy over here. Why can't I use it? I'm just the messenger, everyone. But EBPs really are required in all of our efforts. So in our federal IDEA 2004, it talks about, yep, you got to use evidence-based practices. When we look at the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, you'll see evidence-based practices, even in our ed code. When we look at our behavioral health law, we see that those insurance companies are only supposed to hire vendors who are going to be using these evidence-based practices with fidelity. Even on that Lanterman Act, the Lanterman Act is what created our regional centers. When they hire vendors, they need to make sure that they're using and implementing evidence-based practices. And even ASHA, which is the American Speech Language Hearing Association, they have guidance that say, if you're a speech language specialist or an audiologist, you have to implement evidence-based practices. But really the most important reason is because they work. So what is this evidence-based practice I keep talking about? Well, they're scientifically based research innovations. When the research tells us that this will be effective, we can count on that. And I'll tell you why. When we look at a focused intervention that has evidence of efficacy, it's going to make sure that we have positive outcomes. This is the latest and greatest review of the peer-reviewed journal research out there. It was released on April 27th, 2020. So it's pretty much hot off the press. And what they did is they looked at peer-reviewed journal literature all the way from the very beginning. I think the first one was 1957, all the way through 2017. So here's the criteria for the qualification of an evidence-based practice. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want you to know that it either has to be 2 high-quality group design studies conducted, and this is the most important part, by at least 2 different researchers. So are you starting to see the trend? It's not one researcher doing research and publishing an article and go, see, it works. You have to have 2 researchers that both don't have vested interests in each other's outcome or work, and that they come up with the same findings, unbiased and objective. The other kind of research can be 5 high-quality single case studies conducted by 3 different investigators or research groups. So you can tell that one's got a little bit more strength. Man, if you can find 5 different research that validates an evidence-based practice, that's really something. And again, it's independently researched and coming up with the same findings. And then finally, you can have a combination of high quality group design. Again, you can see across by at least 2 different investigators or research groups. So those are the criteria to be an evidence-based practice. It's not easy to become an evidence-based practice. It takes years to do this research, and then it takes years to have somebody else do the research and come up with the same thing. So you can know that when you see these 28 evidence-based practices, it's not someone who said, oh, here's some things that we like that we think work. It's all based on research. And so Up until last April, we had 27 evidence-based practices, and now we have 28. Now, I can't go over all of these, but what I want you to know is there's a free downloadable report. There's fact sheets on these. It says, what's the definition of the intervention? For what age group would it be appropriate? Why would you use it? What would the outcomes be? And then, most important, all those references that validated, that said it met the criteria of rigorous research. So how do you learn about these? Well, there's free high-quality training called the AFFIRM modules, the Autism-Focused Intervention Resources and Modules. It's a free website. It's for the 28 evidence-based practices. They're free. If you're a BCBA or an SLP, this will count for your continuing professional development and your CEUs that are required for your license. And there's lots of parent resources in there too. So this is worth going on. You just log in, it's free. They don't send you spam or things that you don't want. It becomes your own personalized online learning tool where you can either do it for a certificate or not. You can just say, look, I just want to do it for the sake of learning. There's videos for most of the EBPs, which is really helpful, right? So that you can see it in action and go, oh, that's what that looks like. There's an implementation checklist, and you'll hear me talk about that a lot. We have to implement the evidence-based practice in the way in which the research said it was efficacious or effective. And so oftentimes when I'm coaching and I go in and they go, this didn't work, I said, well, let's get the implementation checklist out and make sure that you have implemented it with fidelity. And most of the time we kind of get to a step and we go, oh, that didn't do that. Oh, let's go back. So it may not be about the evidence-based practice. It may not have been that you didn't select the right one. It just may be that you need to fine-tune how to implement it with fidelity. Now, this is really exciting and new. These 3 online learning modules came out just for paraeducators. And so we've been waiting for this for a long time because, as you know, many individuals with autism have a one-to-one aide, or there's increased staffing in their programs to support them. But it's important for them to have really high quality learning about what is autism. So you can see there's one called the Introduction to Autism, and then they started with these 3. How do you do reinforcement? How do you do prompting? Right? We're always talking about how do we reduce the amount of prompting. We know that the verbal prompt is the most difficult prompt to fade. And so this particular module will talk about the prompting hierarchy and how you start here and how you fade out, because the goal is to make our individuals with autism as independent as possible. And then time delay. You know, sometimes we go in there too fast. We need to give our individuals with autism time to process information. We need to combine that with our prompting and make sure that we've given them a delay so that they can really be as independent as possible. So they started with these 3 modules. So pass those on, especially now. I think that we're in COVID world, that paraeducators, this might be a good time for them to do some online learning and prep for hopefully when we all go back to the other real life we used to know. So what can we do to support students with autism in inclusive settings? We're going to use evidence-based practices. Are you guys surprised? I can't wait to see if somebody is counting how many times I say that. We have a lot of infographics on our website, so if you want to take a look at those, they're kind of at a glance of what does this mean? So our real life now seems to be distance learning. So I had another presentation all ready to go so that when you're on your campus, and this is how we can do inclusive education, but you know, real life now is distance learning. So how can we do that? So I'm going to talk about first some of the supports and tools that we've made as a pivot during COVID-19 and distance learning. If you go to the Captain website, we have 2 Padlets, free. Click on those. They've been specially curated. I kept getting information from the world in California. I'm getting too much stuff. Everybody's got good intentions, but my inbox is overloaded. And some people would get emails with this many links to stuff that's helpful. So what we did is we curated this Padlet. this is the core information you'll need to support individuals, families, and educators during distance learning. And I'm not going to go over these right now, but they're free to you. And guess what we did? We are very fortunate. We had someone translate everything into Spanish. And so all of that information, and then there's some specific Spanish related information there that can be particularly helpful with some 800 numbers, et cetera. So families who speak primarily Spanish can get answers to their questions. But everything I'm going to talk about from here on out is on that Padlet. And please use it freely, share it, give it to anybody that you want. This is what it's made for. There's social stories on here, and they're translated in English, Spanish, and Chinese. These are actually developed by Carol Gray. I got to meet her during COVID. I said, hey, do you have a social story for this? And she goes, oh, let me make one up. So number one, if you really want to know how to write a social story, look at these. Number two, if you need to use a social story because it is an evidence-based practice, use these. We have one on watching a pandemic on television, or what is a pandemic and what is coronavirus, or I can help, and that one's about washing hands, like how they can help. I was sent a lot of social stories during this period, and they said, hey, Ann, why don't you put this on Facebook or post it? But I have to tell you, when I looked at them, they didn't meet the evidence or the criteria for fidelity in development. So I think a lot of us think we know how to write a social story, but guess what? There's a specific way to write it. And there's something called Social Stories 10.2, which is different. So if you have those other books, that's not Social Stories 10.2. It is research-based, and this is how you write it. However, if you go to the Affirm modules and choose social narratives, you'll see the formula for fidelity of developing a social story. So if we're going to use social stories, let's make sure that we've written them correctly. We also have some recordings and resources that we have on our Captain website and at this link. We did helping educators use a distance coaching model to assist families. So if you guys want to listen to that, it's 5 didactic sessions, and they're on the Captain website and at this link here. And we just took it step by step by step on how we can really get through this time period with our students and families with autism. We also have recorded a statewide webinar on how educators can support students with autism and their families through distance learning. And this is about an hour and a half. And you can see the video session link, the PowerPoint link, and it's on the Padlet. I want to talk a little bit about the evidence-based practice, naturalistic intervention, because I think that's a really helpful one during this time. Some people are lamenting that we have this context, but what I'm here to tell you is, we can see a silver lining in some of this. But the evidence-based practice called naturalistic intervention is really one that will work in this particular setting and context that we've found ourselves in. And what it means is that these naturalistic interventions are embedded in the typically occurring activities or routines in the individual's day. We all know that individuals with autism tend to learn rotely, and we have to build in opportunities to generalize that information. Well, naturalistic intervention says, hey, let's teach and do our IEP goals within the context of a natural setting. So in the classroom, if we were in the classroom, we would be working on the visual supports, we would be working on independence within the natural context of the classroom. And at home, we have a complete natural context already at our fingertips. So let me give you an example of a tool that's really helpful to support inclusion and distance learning. And the activity matrix, we've had it around a while. It actually kind of came out of inclusive education. I think a lot of preschool educators have used a matrix. When I first started using it, we developed it for the special day class, and I called that training like 20 years ago, the special day class, how to make the best of it. Because basically an individual with autism had like 10 providers, and they were in this class all day, and I'm like going, we've got to have this make sense. Well, now we've gone full circle and we're saying this is the best tool to use for inclusive education and also for distance learning. And it's a way of visually mapping out for all of us adults these meaningful learning opportunities throughout the day. And it really is conducive to making sure our naturalistic intervention can be used in a really meaningful way. And it absolutely provides generalization of skills. So here's just an example, and we don't have time to do this, but I want to show you across the top, you'll see the goal areas. So this student had academics, communication, social skills, independence, and fine motor. Those are the IEP goal areas. And then down the side is that daily schedule that was collaborated with the family. You know, what works for you, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to highlight the first row so you can see how naturalistic intervention using an activity matrix can be a really ideal way to teach a lot of amazing skills. So they decided, the case manager, the IEP team, and the family, that 9 a.m. was a good time and that the first activity of the day would be to review the daily schedule. So you go, wow, a half an hour to review the schedule? Oh yeah, that's a really important time. Why? Because we can address all these IEP goals. So when you look at the goal area, academics, in reading, they're going to read the words on the schedule. If I was with you in person, I would say, how many of you know an individual with autism who can read anything but doesn't have good reading comprehension? Hopefully you'd all raise your hands. So this really is reading contextually and working on reading comprehension. So we're not only working on decoding and reading those words, but understanding what they really mean. And then we look at math. One of his math goals is to tell time. So now we're going to look at him and we're going to say, what time does this say? What time does this say? What time does this say? And whether you're using analog or digital, we're working on reading and math skills. Boom, right out the gate. Now, when we look at the goal area, the SLP said, hey, look, I really want him to respond to questions and answer questions. So instead of that IEP goal, we'll answer, WH questions. We're really doing this in the meaningful context. And so responding to the prompt, tell me what you want to do today. So the parent's going to say, tell me what you want to do today. So not only does the individual have to process that WH question, they have to formulate the response. And so we're working on processing language and we're working on expressing language. Now, if I was a speech and language specialist, I would have worked with the parent and said, this is what this can look like. Here are the prompts you're going to use. Here are the expectations. Here's a visual prompt to get him going, etc. Now we look at social skills. We want this individual to ask for help using 2 words, help please, because what the individual tends to do with autism in this case is either elopes or makes noises or crumbles into his seat and implodes. What we want him to do is go, I need help. And so we'll talk about that so that when we say, what word is this on your schedule? We want them to go, I help please, like, what is it? Or if they can't read the time on the schedule. So we've built in their ability to really ask for help. And we might use visual supports to do that. Now, when we look at the goal area of independence, they're going to build the order of their daily schedule. Remember those outcomes I showed you earlier where it says the individual isn't making choices? Well, now we're going to say, what do you want to do today? So we're building student agency. We're getting them to stop and think. And what do I want to do? And it may be different levels of support that they'll need to do that, but they're going to build their daily schedule. We're going to give them that quality of life choice. And we also know that this works on critical thinking. It works on agency. It works on, even expressive language and receptive language, but they're participating and engaging in social engagement just to build the order of their schedule. And then we're going to build in, maybe they'll want to do it if they can develop it. And then we look at the goal area for fine motor. And our occupational therapist on the team says, look, we got to work on this pincer grasp. So basically, do we want to have the student have a card with clothespins on it to work on the pincer grasp? I've always thought, I don't even think anybody owns clothespins or uses them. So let's actually teach them to use the pincer grasp in real life. Let's have them rip, pull the Velcro off the picture symbol off the schedule, kind of, or turning the page of a book, right? So let's build it. Again, naturalistic intervention. So hopefully you can get as excited about the activity matrix as I during this distance learning at building independence, teaching academic skills, and it's all based on research. It's based on the evidence-based practice of naturalistic intervention. If you want to read a little bit more about that, I wrote an article in the California Department of Education's newsletter, and it was this summer edition, and I talk about the importance of schedules and routines and the activity matrix more in depth. This activity matrix is in Spanish and English, and it's on the Captain and Padlets. Now, here's some more resources that will be really helpful to you, because I can't teach you everything, but I can give you good stuff that's reliable and research-based to help you out during this new real life that we're experiencing. And this is an online learning toolkit from the Affirm modules, the one I told you that has all the modules on there for you to learn about the 28 evidence-based practices. They created a whole online learning toolkit just for autism, just for individuals and their families and for educators. And there's so much great stuff on here. So I highly recommend, if you're going, I need stuff and I need ideas, go here. They also developed a toolkit for supporting children and youth, and it's in all these languages. Isn't this wonderful? English, Spanish, Chinese, Mandarin. And those of us in California can appreciate this way more than a lot of other states. So I'm thrilled that they have this translated in all these languages. And then we have another one for adults, because I know there's some people out there, either you might be a self-advocate or you might be a parent of an adult individual with autism. And this is just for you. It's different, right? When you're older. When we look at the evidence-based practice called visual supports, that's just another one that we think is, you know, people always go, where would you start? Because you do have to start, right? The journey of 1,000 miles or 1,000,000 miles starts with the first step. And we kind of talk about the key 3 or the core 4 evidence-based practices. Visual supports is always our first one. And so if you guys are wondering, where do I start after Ann stops talking for 60 minutes, go to that visual supports module in the Affirm. Look at those visual support resources that I've given you. This is where we have to start. Our individuals with autism. Now, I'm going to do a little advertisement, because Cassandra Guerrero is presenting next at 1:15 today. And she's doing Maintaining Social Connection During Physical Distancing. She is an amazing Captain Cadre individual. She's living this right now down at San Benito High School. She does Circle of Friends there. She's like amazing. Can you tell I care about her skills so much, and she's really making a difference. So if you want to learn about real life, what do you do at 9 a.m. on Tuesday? Cassandra's going to tell you all that at 1:15 today. This is just an example of what we shared of her work and her team from San Benito High School. They realized that the students with autism who were on these Zoom classrooms, you know, they were needing lots of prompts like, oh, wait, you know, you're unmute yourself, or go to your Gmail, or, you know, you can chat, enter in the chat. And because, as you heard me say earlier, the verbal prompt is the hardest prompt to fade. They used visual supports. And so they printed out these little icons, they glued them on popsicle sticks, and then they can just hold them up. You can see in the second picture, she's holding it up. So it's just subtle. It's a visual prompt. We can all use them sometimes, but we thought that was just a simple but absolutely brilliant idea that's super effective and that will help you during your distance learning. There's a visual supports toolkit in English and Spanish, and so you can find that on the Autism Speaks. Once again, just has a ton of stuff on there to help you. And I'm only sending you to research-based, evidence-based practice sites and materials. You don't have to wonder, oh, is this one of those research things that Ann kept saying was more important? Yeah, it is. We also have, if you want to delve deep into visual supports, you can go here and listen to an 1.5-hour lecture on visual supports. Amber's a great, knowledgeable presenter. And then there's another one on the evidence-based practice known as video modeling. And then these are such a big hit. my colleague, Patty Shetter, who is the co-coordinator of Captain with me, we're both the co-coordinators, she created these quick video tips and strategies, and these are on our Padlet, and they're also on the Mind website. And I'm going to show you a couple of these. They're so great because they're clear, they're concise, they're 1 or 2 minutes, they're 3 minutes. They're basically, this is what it looks like, and this is how to do this. So I'm going to show you this one. And it's going to pull up. And here we go.
Transitions can be really difficult for young children on the autism spectrum. Here's a simple strategy based on the evidence-based practice, visual supports, using a technique from applied behavior analysis called the PREMAP principle, which basically means doing a low probability behavior followed by a high probability behavior. Using a simple first-then visual support, showing a low probability behavior, for example, washing hands, followed by the high probability behavior, for example, eating lunch, can be a really effective way to be able to help your child through a more difficult or less preferred activity in order to earn or get to a more highly preferred activity. This same strategy can be effective for older children as well. You can simply write it down. For example, first, complete homework, then you earn a computer. It's important to make it visual and have it either written down or made in a graphic way to help the child keep track of what's expected and what they'll earn. Visual strategies can be highly effective for any young child and for their own autism spectrum.
Wasn't that great? I asked her, I said, "You're like a professional." And she goes, "I did that in one take. I don't know, something came over me." And I go, "Well, it's pretty amazing." So some of you may go, "Well, I know what a first then card is," but maybe if someone that you're coaching doesn't, maybe the family member doesn't, maybe your paraeducator doesn't. So isn't this a great, quick example? Especially now, you know, while we're all virtual, you know, it's a way that you can actually show someone virtually what that looks like and then have a conversation as you either coach or consult with them. Here's some more helpful resources from Teach. They just did a whole giant section to support distance learning, and so I've given you the area for that. And that just came back as an evidence-based practice. It was off the list for a while, and now it's back as of 2020. So these are some family resources, and just where do we start with our families? And I know many of you have been doing distance learning since March or April or May. I don't know. I think it was staggered a little bit, but I think we've all been doing this for a while, and it looks like we're going to be doing it for a while. But basically, we need to collaborate with the caregiver. I think now more than ever, we need to be engaged with our families and to collaborate with them and connected with them. I do a lot of presentations to the CAC family groups, and you know, I heard one parent, she goes, "I don't want to be a teacher." And I go, I can only imagine that. I get it. Let me help you with some ideas that might make things easier or better. But the foundational is to have that schedule. The end. We all need a schedule. We all know that. And I know this isn't new information to all of you, but we need to communicate that to the parent of what does that daily schedule need to look like. We need to support them in telling them how many events can be easily comprehended. We know some students can handle one thing at a time. Some can do 3. Some need that whole day or they're going to get anxious about what's going to go on. But we have to support the family. So rather than just say they need a daily schedule, we need to talk about what that looks like and have it be a really good match for the family and for the student's ability. And we need to support our families by teaching them how to determine the order of that schedule. You know, and one thing that we really understand is that we don't want to have, you know, a highly preferred activity go to a really less preferred activity. It's just really hard to get an individual off the iPad to go do math that they don't like. And so we'll have conversations with the family about when we're building that schedule, let's do it strategically so that the transitions can be supported and not so difficult. And then encourage the caregiver to display that schedule. Sometimes there's a daily schedule, and I've done this even with teachers in a classroom. I go, where's the schedule? And they go, it's over there. And I go, well, we got to put that where everybody can see it. It's a visual support for the adults. Oh, okay. So we need it up front and center, and it needs to be updated because, you know, there's nothing an individual with autism doesn't like is that when something changes and it's supposed to be one way and now it isn't. We know they can do better when they're given a cue, change, but we need to prepare for that. And then we need to make sure the family understands, or the caregiver, how to review that schedule throughout the day. Like, we did this, this, and this, and that's all done. And so we know most of our individuals with autism like to have it done. So work with them on, is it going to be with a check mark, or are they going to turn it over? Are they going to put the object or the icon in a finished basket? But all the principles that you are using in the classroom at the school site are absolutely paramount to have happening in the home. And that the visual boundaries and structure, we know, you know, and I'm sure you've all worked with families, and it can be really hard. You know, sometimes parents, they're both working at home and they have 3 or 4 kids, and, you know, the whole place becomes, you know, where's everybody going to be to access the Wi-Fi? But as much as possible, with love and compassion, help figure out a way to have some physical boundaries and structure for our individuals with autism. We know that they can be distracted. It's better if they know what's going to happen. It's going to calm their anxiety if this is where I am and this is what I'm going to do when I'm here. And I think it helps the ripple effect of when the structure isn't there, that what goes on. And not everybody's going to be able to have a desk and a chair in a corner, but, you know, you can also design other areas that are just cordoned off. So brainstorm with them, work with them, lean into exceptions, and okay, this will probably work, or what if you moved that chair? But to collaborate with them. Our students actually need structured work systems just like they did in the classroom. You know, first I'm going to do this. This is the work I'm going to do. So we need to give them the structure to have their work in a way. The visual supports help them get organized. So for our students that are using binders and books, maybe if we match the colors for that. And then even having, you know, this just a simple folder that has to do and finished. And I'm going to show you another video that Patty did that really depicts this particular one so that you can share and show with parents, or if you're coaching other educators, you can show them.
Tip to help you and your child get through homework. Sometimes homework can be overwhelming because there's so many different things to keep track of. A simple strategy like a homework folder can be really helpful in organizing work. On the inside of this folder, you'll see on the left side is labeled to do, and on the right side is labeled finished. Also on the right side is a reward that your child can earn after homework is completed. The simple strategy is to place all of the work that needs to be done on the left side, the to-do side. The child learns to do the work, and when it's finished, they place it in the finished side on the right-hand side. All of the work on the to-do side is completed, but hit on the right-hand side, they can earn a reward. Sometimes an entire worksheet with multiple problems may be overwhelming for a child. Another simple strategy is to take that sheet and cut it into 2 or more pieces. Place those on the to-do side, so when your child opens the folder and pulls out the first sheet, there might only be 2 or 3 problems to do. Chunking the worksheet into sections can make it a lot easier for the child to complete the work without getting overwhelmed. For older children, it can also be helpful to color code, with different colors representing different subject areas. The homework folder can match the color of the book cover, and that way it helps with material organization.
Isn't she great? All these quick video tips and strategies are on this link, and just go to the Captain Padlet and it'll click on that and it'll take you right there. So I would suggest that you go to the Captain website, and at the top, I've got my alarm going, I don't want to go over. So the other evidence-based practice, and it has a very fancy name, antecedent-based interventions. And just think of ante meaning before. These are things that we can put into place before so that we can increase engagement. So some examples are, we might say, 5 more minutes, or we're going to use special interest activities so that they'll be more motivated to care about some of the schoolwork that we're giving them. We're going to use those visual supports to set expectations, offer choices. Do you want to do this or that? As a behavior specialist, often when I come in and I said, have you given them a choice? So when they say, I don't want to do this, well, do you want to do this or this? Both of which I think are okay for me to do. So we have to be a little flexible, but sometimes we can diffuse a resistance by just offering choices. And again, it's an antecedent-based intervention. It's a research-based practice. And so we're going to give heads up and use countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we're finished so they can see it's, whatever you're having them do that they may not like that much, it's going to be over soon. These timers and alarms are super helpful. They tell the student something is going to take this long or it's going to be over, and so we don't get into the power struggles. This website has 20 visual timers, so they're all there, and you can take a look and find out the one that might be most appropriate for your student. Absolutely use learner preferences. In the olden days, they used to say, they're obsessed with their special interests. The research now says, use it. Take advantage. If they love Legos, let's do Lego math. If they love superheroes, and sometimes I have found if they like dinosaurs and I just put a sticker, and if you're doing distance learning, you might have just a little graphic up there at the top of maybe a PowerPoint slide or a Google slide. It's like, okay, that's enough. I see my favorite thing up there. That'll interest me, because they may not just be that into you. I've heard a lot of requests, when I get on, they don't want to engage with me. They run away from the television monitor and the family can't get them back. Well, okay, if they're not into me, I know they're into Lego. So maybe it's going to be about their favorite interest, and that's okay, especially during COVID time. Choices, choices, choices. All the time. I can't tell you. Do you want to use your pen or your pencil? Do you want to use the mouse or the cursor? Do you want to use these colors? Do you want to use the Jamboard, or do you want to go use the whiteboard on Zoom? Do you want to do English or math? Let's build your schedule. Do you want to sit while you're doing this class, or do you want to stand? Over and over and over. And then we give our visual rules so that we're not constantly saying verbally. Remember, the verbal prompt is the hardest prompt to fade. So we have visual reminders of what we want them to do. I'm not going to go into this, but if PBIS was a school-wide intervention that was working at their school, PBIS has adapted it for home. And so my thing is like, maybe don't try something brand new and different. But if your child was attending a PBIS school and they were using all of those particular interventions in there and signs and signals, they have taken the time to say, here's how to bring that into the home. And then it's very familiar. They can anchor it onto something that they understood. It's not all brand new and different. And then you guys know, choice boards, choice boards, choice boards. What do you want to do? And then we talked about the first then, really making that important. And we do have to partner with our families and collaborate with them and coach them and be flexible and explore how they can just use their smartphone if that's what they have available. We need to observe a lesson and empower parents. And for those of you who are coaches, and you may not be the teacher, join in on those sessions and support your educators who maybe might be struggling with our students with autism during distance learning. So all of you who are educators and you go, yeah, I could use that help, go to that Captain website, look at your Captain cadre and give them a call and say, hey, I would like for you to observe one of my lessons and give me some ideas on which evidence-based practices. We also have a PowerPoint that we did that's recorded in Spanish and English for families and family support providers about evidence-based practices for autism. And you could just share that with a family and say, here's all the supports. And there's an introduction to autism online course that's free as part of those Affirm modules. It's about 30 minutes. It's just like, what is autism and what are these EBPs? This one I love. It's called the Autism House, and it's visual supports for the home. And they actually took an expert who has a video that you're watching them walk through a house. And here's how to use these visual supports in the kitchen. Here's how to use these visual supports in the bathroom. Here's how to use these visual supports in the dining room. So here's how to access the TV and the refrigerator. And so I think these two videos are amazing. And I think, like I always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and these videos are going to be really helpful. Here's some other videos that are free about very young children and families working using evidence-based practices based on the Early Start Denver model. So you can just click on a video and go, oh, that's what it looks like when a parent is working with a very young child with autism. These are Adept Autism Distance Education Parent Training. They're in English and Spanish, and you can either do this as your parent training, and there's module 1 for teaching functional skills and module 2 for positive behavior strategies, or you could just give these to parents. It's designed for them to access it on their own. So either way, the work's all done for you. It's evidence-based, research-based, ready to go. So whether you're going to give it or disseminate it to a family to support them. This is brand new. It's a companion guide for families, once again from a firm, and it's about what is reinforcement. Reinforcement can sound really complicated when we're trying to explain it as a BCBA or an educator or someone who is a behavior specialist. This is a way that it really makes it accessible so that we really understand it. And I think our bandwidth right now on learning detailed, deep information about expert topics, I'm always appreciative of something that makes it accessible, simplified, and doable. These are all our infographics for families. They're on the Captain website. I'm not going to read all of them, but once again, if you're supporting families, these are all the resources that we have. Again, going to the CDC website, the Learn the Signs Act Early Work, again, is research-based and evidence-based. We have brochures for every Captain region that has all essential phone numbers of support. And so you can, click on that on the Captain website and send it out to a family, and it has all the numbers they need. Here's the Golden Gate regional number. Here's your support for family. Here's the matrix. So each region has their own with the specific agencies and phone numbers that can support a family. And then this is just a nice little perk on the other side, which shows a developmental scale. For those of you who are just working with little ones, they've taken all these evidence-based practices and put them in this website. It's the same stuff. It's just you don't have to muddle through older kids' stuff. And if you just work with older individuals with autism, here's the websites for you. These Autism at a Glance series are really helpful. It's supporting success and safety in relationships. Our individuals with autism grow up and they have relationships, and what do those look like? Here's some guidance tools. Exercise for adolescents with autism. I think that would come in really handy right now, because I think all of us are kind of, being a little kind of sedentary because we're on home. And so this really talks about ways to encourage and provide exercise information. And then looking at depression, remember I told you, depression and anxiety are really often a accompanying condition that goes with autism, especially as they grow older. And so there's 2 actual Autism at a Glances on both those topics that will help families and educators like, okay, that's might be what it is. What do we do? And then there's challenging behaviors. There's some presentations on there. But, as I always say, these are research-based, evidence-based. And everything that I've talked about today is on the Captain website. Go to our Facebook page and our Instagram page. It's all free. And then, check out our Facebook. Every day we put up new stuff. You don't have to worry, is this okay? Because it is, because I'm the one that posts it with Patty. So you're going to get just good stuff. And really, just remember that children and families can't benefit from evidence-based practices that they don't experience. So that's our mission, is to make sure everybody knows about these tools, resources, and evidence-based practices. And if somebody was counting the number of times I said evidence-based practice, I would like to know that. So thank you very much. I think I've left 5 minutes for some questions. And here's the way to contact me. I would love to hear from you. This is my passion. I'm dedicated to it. I want to help everybody. And I'm available pretty much a lot these days. So I would welcome any kind of outreach that you want to send to me. Yay! Well, I'm thrilled, and we're making more every day just for you. And here's what I would really like to know. Tell me what you want. Like if something isn't there, tell us and we'll figure that out, because I'm not out there providing distance learning. I'm going to go sit in with some of my cadre and get in the middle of it, but I've never done distance learning, right? I spent my whole career working in real life classrooms and coaching and serving individuals and families, but I haven't done distance learning, and I want to learn how to be better at that. And so the way I feel like I can do it is to go hang out in some of those sessions and really think about it and live it and come up with ideas. But I want to hear, send me an email, you go, I need this, or have you thought about this? Love to hear your ideas from the real world, boots on the ground folks who are really out there making a difference. Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great conference. Bye.